Well, it's time now for a look at the day's top business news, and for that I'm joined in the studio by Brian Quinn. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Haxie.
You're starting with a major leadership shake-up at one of the world's top multinational food companies, based here in Paris.
That's right. The board of yogurt giant Danone has ousted Emmanuel Faber from his post as both CEO and board chairman, that under pressure from activist investor groups. He'll be replaced as chairman by recently appointed director Gilles Schnepp, leaving the maker of Evian bottled water now on the search for a new chief executive. Recent lackluster share price and weak sales had led investment funds, Artisan Partners, and Bluebell Capital to begin calling for a change in leadership. A boardroom compromise had yielded a plan for Faber to give up the CEO position but stay on as chairman. Management changes and a restructuring plan, though, appear to have weakened his position. Since taking the helm in 2014, Faber had been pushing the company towards more sustainable and socially responsible business practices. The CFDT, French labor union, recently objected to the campaign to oust him based on those principles. Take a listen.
Having shareholders who voted 99.5% for a mission-oriented company, they must also understand that we cannot have the same profitability as some large groups who only seek profitability without looking at what's around them.
Next, Brian, China has just released its latest batch of economic data, and it looks like the country is charging back from the pandemic.
It certainly does, Haxie. The Chinese economy surged in the first 2 months of 2021. The country's industrial output was up 35% for January and February. Retail sales up 33.8% compared to the previous year. Well, those massive numbers, of course, are due in large part to the coronavirus shutdowns that hit the Chinese economy in 2020, months earlier than Western counterparts. Still, the numbers beat even analysts' best expectations, driven by brisk trade, the release of pent-up demand, both domestically and internationally. Beijing says it's expecting that rebound to continue over the year.
Judging from the momentum of the Chinese economy's recovery and the support policies, there is a foundation as well as the right conditions for this economic recovery to continue at this rate in 2021, and we're all positive about that.
And Brian, what are we seeing on the market so far today?
European index is opening in positive territory as investors look ahead to this week's meeting of the U.S. Federal Reserve, where a quickening recovery there after last week's passage of that $1.9 trillion stimulus bill could potentially lead to rising interest rates. Danone shares are up over 4% on that boardroom shakeup. London and Paris up slightly. The DAX in Frankfurt just above flat. Asian indexes, as we see here, mixed on Monday despite that rosy macroeconomic data out of China. Tokyo's Nikkei closing just above the flat line. Shanghai down nearly 1%. Hong Kong up around 0.25% at the close. The Kospi in Seoul ending its session down just over 0.25%.
Well, Brian, finally for business, it's now been a full year since the first coronavirus lockdown here in France. And in the meantime, bars and restaurants have been mostly shut, of course, and that has been hitting their suppliers particularly hard.
Very much so. Beverage suppliers in particular have been struggling amid closures, not just of bars and restaurants, but also of the live events sector. Sales of soft drinks and alcoholic beverages have plunged in the past year. French drinks makers are now trying bulk sales direct to the consumer in a bid to make up some of their lost revenues. Yinka Oyatada reports.
Fed up with seeing stock gather dust as a result of the pandemic, this beverage supplier has decided to open up its warehouse to sell off merchandise at discounted prices. This customer is on the hunt for wines from Bordeaux. He's just spotted bottles of Médoc at 50% off.
Ah oui, alors 2011, oui d'accord. C'est un très bon prix.
But not everyone is finding bargains.
Date limite, elle est au 18. Ça a affiché à 7,80 €. C'est le même prix qu'en magasin.
Making savings is not the only reason why some of these customers are here.
Il y a l'occasion de faire de bonnes affaires. Un peu de solidarité aussi par rapport à des entreprises qui sont en difficulté.
These warehouse sales have become essential for suppliers keen to make up losses. They've seen their profits plummet as a result of the closure of bars, restaurants and nightclubs. The sector represents 80% of their sales.
Et on a un niveau de coût fixe extrêmement élevé. On a des bâtiments importants, on a des camions. En gros, il nous manque 1 million d'euros par mois pour faire face à la situation économique. Donc cette opération va nous permettre de renflouer un peu les caisses, mais très clairement, ce sera largement insuffisant.
Beverage wholesalers are holding their breath. They hope restaurants and bars will be allowed to reopen in April.